Okay, hi there. My name is Catherine Ryan. I'm the managing director at the Randall House Museum. I'm here today to talk to you about the exterior repair project and the grant we've applied for. So when I tell people that I work for the Randall House Museum, if they're grown up from here, I usually get a similar response. And it's something along the lines of, oh, I remember the Randall House. I haven't been forever. I should really go back. And this used to bug me, but when you think about it, it's not actually a negative statement. What's going on there is the people we serve at the museum are children with their caregivers and tourists. People don't often go to the museum in their own town. They go to the museum in another town. And so regardless of if residents go to this museum often, what it does now is it serves as a symbol of comfort and it gives a sense of place to Wolfville. And another important function it's serving right now is a way for visitors and newcomers, of which there will be a lot soon, to get to know us and to get to know our history. Briefly, the Randall House was built in circa 1800 by Aaron Cleveland, who was a cooper, and it was later purchased by Charles Randall in 1812. It's the town's second oldest building and is the only one available to the public. So this is a map of what the area around Randall House looks like today, including the old rail line, and the X marks where Randall House is, and that little squiggle beside it is the duck pond. So people know generally that Wolfville used to be called Mud Creek, but fewer people really actually know that Mud Creek was a creek that flowed into the inner harbor, which was where the Willow Park is today. In order to get around the harbor, First Nations, Acadians, and planter populations had to go around the harbor and over Mud Bridge, which is where that red dot is, which spanned Mud Creek, and then back down to what we now know as Main Street. What we know as downtown Wolfville, where we are today, it wasn't like this. It was basically farmers' fields and the occasional farmer's house dotting the landscape. And during the Age of Sail, Mud Creek, this area here, became a busy shipping port and the center of commercial activity, in effect, our first sort of downtown. Several shops, hotels, and businesses were built around Mud Creek to serve the area, and Randall House stood at the center of it all. At the time around Confederation, we got our first rail line with the invention of the steam engine. Our tiny harbor was changed forever. So in effect, the rail line cuts off access. You see that little ladder going across the mouth there. The rail line cuts off access to the inner harbor. And once the road was straightened out, as you see here, to accommodate the growing automobile traffic at the turn of the century, the inner part stood unused and just an eyesore. So this didn't change until Charles Patrick bought the Randall House in 1927 and eventually turned it into the duck pond, and that became the Willow Park that we enjoy today. So just over a year ago.
Back to reality.
Hello. We received the unfortunate but not totally unexpected news that the exterior repairs were required on the Randall House. So that includes the roof being reshingled, siding replaced, trim replacement, the soffit and fascia up at the top connecting to the roof, and heritage window replacement if we're to remain a heritage designated building. Several qualified contractors have visited over the past year and have assessed the structure. And what they are telling me is that this 200-year-old building has great bones. There's no reason to think it's going to fall down, but if we don't fix the outside, the inside, the problems are going to go inside. Barry Hilt, he's the site manager of Ross Farm Museum and a noted built heritage expert in the area, came down and saw the foundation in there. He said it's the best foundation he's seen in his 30-year career, one of the best. So, and you can really sense it, especially when you're up in the attic and when you're down in the basement, how very strong this building is. They don't build them like this anymore. But to add urgency to the situation, the building currently houses a collection of about 5,000 artifacts that represent about 150 years of Wolfville social history. The integrity of the building is, if the integrity of the building is compromised, it's going to be really difficult to keep these items safe from mold and corrosion, which occur in a building that's been compromised. So over the past 75 years, the Wolfville Historical Society, of which there are many members here today, have delivered many fine exhibits, programs, publications, and events to the community. But with the estimate of the repairs coming in at about $350,000, they were questioning whether or not they would be able to continue doing the work that they do and if the museum might need to be closed and sold. But what was realized was that if we were to do that, it would almost surely result in the eventual demolition of Randall House. It's in a very desirable location in town, very prominent. And it's a shame. It really is a shame because despite the condition of our house and the difficulties of depending on volunteerism to run our organization, we are actually serving the community really well. And let me tell you how. We're an extremely prominent location at the East End gateway of town with views to the harbor, Dykelands, and the New Moon Trail. We have beautiful gardens maintained by volunteers very well, and the public is encouraged to enter and eat the produce. In the last year, we've welcomed over 2,500 visitors through our doors and with the programming, and that rivals the highest numbers in 1980s. There are no other similar family-friendly heritage offerings in town, and it offers some variety to the town's experience. We host many heritage-related events in the summer, and community program goes all year round. We are doing the often invisible and complicated work of caring for Wolfville's historic treasures. And I just want to show you this relic. From the archives. It's a motion from the town council passed in 1988 that shows how our work was once valued. It declares that the town would accept responsibility for the collection should the Historical Society cease to exist. We don't want that, just to be clear. But I just want you to know how closely we worked at some point and how it was valued. We provide quality employment every year to one curator, who's sitting right there, Crystal Tanner, and 2 summer students who in many cases have gone on to be residents of Wolfville or gone on to be heritage experts in the field. Considering the good that the museum is still delivering to the community and the fact that the WHS's core mandate is to preserve history, what was eventually decided was to direct all of the remaining resources towards saving the building and trying to improve on how it serves the community. So towards that end, that's what I'm doing here. I've been they've hired me for the next 2 years. And the goals of my position at this point are to raise funds for and oversee those repairs on Randall House, create a stronger governing board focused on the museum, just to really focus down just on the museum, to secure an additional $10,000 in yearly sponsorships to support museum operations. That would make it less touch and go. And it's not a huge amount to find if we really put our minds to it. And to finally design a new interpretive plan for the museum that represents our area's history in a more authentic and inclusive way. So over the next year, we'll be consulting with community and working with heritage professionals to change the story we tell at Randall House and to focus in on that story. Randall House has been known as Randall House since 1812. With a name like that, visitors might expect to find a historic style house that tells the story of the Randall family and that has articles from that family. But the truth is, we don't know anything about the Randalls, hardly at all. We don't have any articles that we know of belonging to them. And so focusing on the Randall name limits the story that we can tell in that house, which is a shame because there is really so much more story to tell. The history of Mud Creek represents a convergence of so many histories. It's a story of many people who've lived in this place and the fascinating ways that it's changed. The museum stands ready to bring this diverse stories of Mud Creek to life, but we need a building to act as the home base. This is our last chance to save the building and the potential for this story to be told. So I don't know if it's been passed along, but I've provided a summary report. Okay, great. And I just wanted to point out the section that was made especially for you folks, which is a section aligning the municipal planning strategy with the goals of our organization. So we're a valuable part of the Main Street landscape, and Wolfville is better when it can strike a balance between old and new. Once the housing units are built across the street, Main Street is finally going to run all the way in a consecutive line back to where the town's origins began. The Wolfville Historical Society is seeking funding from multiple sources, including the town of Wolfville, to aid in the repairs. The exterior repairs are estimated to cost about $350,000 and are planned to be carried out over the next 4 years. Work would begin this summer. Not only would the exterior envelope need to be restored, but the walls need to be insulated so that this building can be more usable in a year-round capacity. So not only would the funds from the one-time grant be essential to phase 1 starting, but receiving the grant would be a signal to other levels of government that our town believes in what we're doing. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Catherine. Members of council, do you have questions? Councillor Madeira-Voss.
Thank you, Catherine. That was a great presentation. And I must say, I really enjoyed the presentations that were made at the AGM recently. I thought they were very, very useful, very thorough and very clear. And one of the things that came up there was the name, because I think, as you just alluded to, there's no articles of the Randall family in that, and yet we call it the Randall House. Mm-hmm. Has the society made any decisions around maybe renaming the museum so that it reflects, you know, Wolfville House or whatever it is that you wanted to come, but so that the name reflects the town a little bit more clearly than Randall House does?
At that meeting, some interesting options were put forward for the name of the museum, and I would say at the board meeting that went after, everyone is in favor of changing that name. Now, I would love to say it is going to be called this right now, but it's probably more prudent to go through the community planning piece of this before and really look at how we're going to guide the interpretation here. But what you're seeing is the very beginnings of what I believe to be a name change, and everybody on the board has been supportive of that concept.
Thank you. Councillor Ingham.
Thanks. I do agree with the things you said and other things too, but you do have beautiful gardens there. Yeah. And the outside is in need of repair. I do walk by there every day and I'm like, and over the years that I've walked by, I have seen that it has definitely the chipping away of the exterior. So that leads me to just two questions. So you mentioned heritage windows. Mm-hmm. Is that for like all the windows? And what's the difference if you don't put heritage windows in, it cannot be a heritage building?
Okay. So I just drove all the way to St. John to go to a conference about basically the push and pull between having newer materials versus older materials. There's a number of factors at play. One is if there's a number of pots of money that I can apply to based on our designation as a heritage provincial and municipal heritage building. In order to keep that designation, which isn't the end all and be all, like we don't have to do that if it's determined not to be the best thing for it. If we want to keep those designations, we need to keep the exterior looking as it did in the past, which means wood windows, wood siding. Fortunately, we are allowed to have asphalt shingles because that's what we have right now. So we just need to keep it looking as it is right now. So I went on a journey talking to these people about different products. Are there, you know, composite materials or vinyl materials or that sort of thing, something that looks just right, but may last for longer. And I've gotten quite a bit of pushback on the concept that vinyl windows would be actually a better fit in this case. Speaking to Barry Hiltz from Ross Farm, he says if you get a wood window with the exterior storm window, so that's like a 2-window system, and it's built really well, primed as you go. The last time they put windows in our building was 200 years ago.
Oh, wow.
Do you know what I mean?
Mhm.
And so I said, well, what about our value? He said, it's really only a few, it's only really a few levels below. It's still pretty high if you have a well-built window. What you really need to do, and this is what a lot of these people at the conference were saying, it's all about sealing it, making sure that wind doesn't come in. The other thing you have to be really careful about when you're replacing, putting new materials into an old building, those walls and everything about that building is an ecosphere. So if I'm gonna go, for example, do what one of my bidding contractors suggested and go put, you know, styrofoam insulation on the outside, I'm gonna have a mold problem in there really quickly, right? So, cause there's like the dew point is what they call it. Right now, when I analyze my humidity in there, I can see the building is breathing. You know, when it rains, it's wetter in there. When it dries out, I see it go out within 2 days. I track it by the hour. I can see the trends. So you can't interrupt that ecosphere without knowing what you're doing. But that's not to say maybe that place could have solar panels. But these are all negotiations I have to have with the bodies who partially fund us at this point.
Mhm.
But I don't think there's anybody in our organization who is going to live and die by having it have to be exactly as it once was. But we want it is a heritage asset, so we need to be careful about just replacing it with all new materials just because it is perceived as being the better option these days. We can't think of it as a new building.
Can I just follow up on that? Thank you. That was very well answered. So the other question leads into that. So as you're replacing the exterior and you're hoping the interior is gonna be more efficient, and you mentioned the items in there and the artifacts. Right now, are they being affected right now by the exterior not being, maybe it's not that warm? I don't know how warm it is in there in the wintertime. Are they being affected? Are the artifacts being affected? And do you have to store them somewhere, and have you lost any?
So, mold is, as Crystal will know, is something we need to mitigate all the time. If we see a little mold spore, we need to treat it. And that's what the curator is especially trained for, okay? So it's something that we need to deal with constantly. A cold building is not actually bad for these artifacts. A cold, wet building is the worst possible thing you could do, because that's just going to equal mold, right? A hot building is probably more problematic, which is also what we have. Much of it's about just trying to control the humidity. So we have dehumidifiers. We're always going in and changing them out, that sort of thing. If you're asking me what the best solution for our collection would be, we have 5,000 articles. I would love to have 2,500 articles, like half it. And the thing is, since we've been taking things since 1949, the practices around accessioning things have professionalized and become more clear. And now you do it based on, does it fit the mandate of telling the story of Wolfville area? And the next thing really would be provenance. Can I tell a story with this item? So we have a clock that used to hang on the wall at Porter's General Store, and we have a picture of it hanging on the wall with people around it. You know, that's something I can use in my collection. We have, one thing we have a lot of is beautiful textile pieces, because one of our curators about 10 years ago was like top in her field. We have pieces of national importance in our collection, but I don't, you know, we have so much of it. It just really needs to be gone through. So it needs to be gone through. And ideally, I think an offsite collection that's more temperature controlled is the end goal. And everything goes into our database system, which we have, but it's incomplete at this point. Students every year add to it. If we have a database of the exact right things we want stored off site, we know what we have, and we can bring it to the house. That house is not really meant for storage. You know, it's meant for showing pieces. And also, if that collection could be cared in such a way, it could be brought into other areas. Like, let's say you wanted like an interpretive display at whatever the train museum is going to be, or your new town hall, or that sort of thing. That sort of thing could be shared as a resource. It doesn't need to just be in that house.
Councillor Palmer.
Thank you. I was down and got a tour, I don't know,
Yeah.
2 weeks ago, the day you were going to St. John, whatever day that was. Anybody hasn't been the last few years should go, because it's been 10 years, 20 years since I've been there. I'm glad to hear you say that you're not hung up on being your heritage designation. I suspect that the answer is somewhere between all modern and all old, and I don't know what the answer is. But I wouldn't get hung up on that heritage designation as far as the pool of money you could pull on.
Yeah.
I don't know what that's worth to you guys.
At this point, it's an equation that needs to be sorted. It's not an easy, you can't just call up someone and ask, you know, if I do this, will I get money? It's a complicated, sort of nuanced procedure that I'm going through right now. I'm trying to get answers on that. There are other heritage buildings that have decided not to go the designation route, just so that they don't have that oversight. You know, there certainly are other pools of money that they can pull from, but certainly being a heritage designation is helpful for community culture and heritage grants and federal cultural grants.
Right. Okay. And you said it's the second oldest. I gotta admit, the Whidden House?
Kent Lodge.
Kent Lodge.
Oh, Kent.
Kent Lodge, yes, they got us.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you very much, Catherine. It's, as a member of the Historical Society, it's a pleasure to hear your description. I just think people might be interested, and this might be a Crystal question. How many ghosts are there resident? And how many television production crews have come and filmed in that house?
Yeah, still in March.
In March.
Yeah,
Another ghost?
oh,
Another TV program.
yeah. How many? See, no, they don't bother me. I'm there all the time. They're happy we're there if they're there. Now, Crystal's had more experiences and certainly has been, she has sort of relationships. Yeah.
They're not.
Yeah, the students occasionally are.
Students won't go in without me.
Yeah.
Their hands.
Yeah, I think that's a friendly presence, but I mean, Crystal has connections to a lot of the TV folks and has ushered in quite a few people to show our house.
Been on a TV show.
We have, yeah, it's really easy to do a haunted house there.
Councillor McKay.
Thank you. Yeah, I had never been in Randall House, but I did at Christmas time and it was really nice. It was lovely to come in and show it. So thank you for that, for hosting that. I have two questions. One, can you remind me what, because having that historical designation on the house, what does that allow you to do aside from get grants? Is it protected from being changed in any way, shape or form? You said it could be torn down, but can it be if it's?
It would need to be declassified.
Okay.
It's a process,
right,
right? So what was the name of the house that just got torn down? a couple of
Oh,
years
yeah,
ago?
I saw that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
In
And
Davenport.
we had Christie House, which was the blue
The
house.
Reed
in
House,
front of
right.
the-
It was the
Yes.
Reed House, yeah. So that's
The
an
Reed
example
House
of,
is the Avonville
yeah.
one.
so if if someone wanted to buy that place and knock it down, and face the fiery wrath of
Yeah.
the heritage folks, there's not there's not a lot of teeth to that, legislation as it appears. But certainly being a museum and being part of our museum community, and having the mandate to preserve built heritage, it's certainly not what we want to have happen. And just when we put our little SOS sign up there over the summer, I've had people approach me saying, in no uncertain terms, they would buy that, and they're not looking to refurbish that house. Yeah.
Second question is, I know from the town, we give funding $10,000 a year, correct?
Yes.
Right? And that's it, just how I can recall, operational. What do other communities, just recently, because it was Heritage Day, I saw a bunch of things that friends had posted from the Kentville Historical Society, but what do communities or towns do, either from an operational, strategic, or a long-term viability, do for historical societies that we might model?
I would like to answer that question, not all here today.
Okay.
Because it is something I'm looking into right now, and I sense, people genuinely want to figure out the issue of what to do with old houses. I've looked into, for example, Bridgewater. The municipality has taken on the building itself and the museum itself, and there are different levels of success with that. When we were going through this, when we found out about the repairs, we certainly wondered if the town might want to take on the ownership of the house or the running of the house or anything like that. And I would say it's not completely off the table, but for as long as we as an organization can, because we have the expertise, we have the connections and the specialty. As long as we can keep this out of that realm, I think it's better for everybody. I mean, just having it fail doesn't seem like an option that anybody wants. And if we can bring our expertise to it, then I think it's the best possible solution. But we really struggle with our operational expenses, which is why I'd love, we really would like to get those sponsorships. We really struggle with, just keeping the building up. We do our very best with our membership, but it's the point of the other side of what we're trying to do here is renew what we offer to the community in hopes that we can build our membership. I think what I'm hearing out there on the ground is that relying on volunteerism to run your buildings is not a viable business model today. It was. You look at the pictures of the folks who ran the society in the 90s. I mean, it was just a going concern. People had all the time in the world, compared to these days. But I'm a mother. I can't find the time to volunteer, though I have tried to. So we're trying to roll with the times here. I would like to look into more answers about how municipalities deal with their heritage buildings. But I say this all the time. So I used to be a florist, and brides would always want to take a little bit of money and spread it all over their tables. Okay, and like have a little bud vase here and a bud vase there. And what I always say is put your money where people are looking, right? Like be strategic about it. Don't spread it out over little spots. And that's what I think is that makes sense in this case.
I would be really interested to hear what a strategic long-term plan of us working together would look like. Not outside of, I know this is one decision, but outside of that, I'd love to hear what you come up with in the next step.
Thank you very much.
If you could share that
Thank
with
you for
us.
visiting.
Yeah.
Thank you. Other members of council? I'm going to ask council, given that we have the audience here and there's nothing in our agenda that says when we will deal with the motions. Would it be acceptable to council to deal with these two motions now before we get back to the general budget? Is that